Great. So, Namaskar and a very warm welcome to everyone joined in today on our 20th Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo talk. This talk is being organized by the Central Zoo Authority, New Delhi, as part of the ongoing Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The Mahotsav is a 75-week long celebration to commemorate 75 years of India's independence, which falls on the 15th of August 2022. The Central Zoo Authority is taking the celebration forward through a massive outreach campaign entitled Conservation to Coexistence, the People Can Lead. Under the helm of this campaign, we will be highlighting 75 conservation priority species and 75 zoos, highlighting one species and one zoo each week. We are currently in week 20 of the celebration with the Blackbuck as the species in focus and the Tata Steel Zoological Park as the zoo in focus. Joined in today to speak to us on the species is Dr. M.K. Ranjit Singh. So, Dr. Ranjit Singh needs no introduction in the conservation community, as throughout his career, he has been instrumental in paving the way for various initiatives, be it facilitating the first ever translocation of a village outside a protected area or to drafting the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Dr. Ranjit Singh was also the first director for Wildlife Preservation of India under this act and was also the member secretary of the task force that formulated Project Tiger, which is one of the most successful conservation stories in our country. Over his checkered career in India and abroad, he has overseen and launched several conservation programs for endangered species and has helmed the notification of as many as 8 national parks and 11 sanctuaries. He's a force to be reckoned with when it comes to protecting our environment. And it is an honor to have you, sir, today for sharing your experience on this species in focus. I would now request you to please begin your talk.
Thank you very much, Arundhati, and thank you very much, all members and representatives of the Central Zoo Authority for not just calling me, but for asking me to talk on the blackbuck. Because there is, in my opinion, far too much focus on the mega mammals of India, whether they are the large cats or the elephant or rhinoceros. Of course, they should be very, very important, but not at the expense of losing sight of the other species and of their habitats, especially those which are very greatly endangered. So I compliment the Central Zoo Authority for selecting on the blackbuck. As far as the animal itself is concerned, I think there is no animal more representative of India. I know a lot of people may not like it, but if you take into account, firstly, the endemism, that it is found only, there are very few animals which occur only in the Indian subcontinent, as they say, endemic to India, Indian subcontinent. The four-horn antelope, the nilgai, the blackbuck, and there are one or two more. But of all these, the blackbuck is the most spectacular. Of all the animals, the herbivores at least, I don't think any, and I was a student of history, appears so much in art and literature. Yes, the mega mammals do, of course, the elephant and the tiger and the lion. But amongst the smaller animals, no animal appears so frequently in our old accounts, in cave paintings. Can I have the slide? The next one. Yes, this is a cave painting, which is obviously of a blackbuck, and it is about 4000 BC, so 6000 years old. There are other depictions in the Indus Valley seals everywhere, in the Jatakas, in the Pitakas, in the Pahari school of painting, and of course in the and captured. And at that place, Jahangir put up a plaque which says, and he records it in his memoirs, Tuzuka Jahangiri. It says, and I quote, In this enchanting place, a noble soul came into this world. And he said that this area is a sanctuary, no blackbuck will be killed. Mansaram, his favorite blackbuck, red blackbuck, uh, has been painted over and over again by Ustad Mansoor, great Mughal painter, and others. And he records that he has ordered his guards that when Mansaram goes past, the guards must salute him. Well, that was Mansaram. But throughout history, if you look at the thing, you know, is old school Rasmala, that the rags are associated with certain animals. Blackbuck is the only one with which two Hindustani classical rags are associated with, Bhimpalas and Tori. So, I mean, the animal has had its um, own stature. It was, at one point of time, an extremely numerous animal, ubiquitous. In my childhood, I remember my boyhood, going along, and I used to look out from the car, always there were blackbuck to be seen. Dunbar Brander and Salim Ali have recorded that in their train journeys, Dunbar Brander said he went from Bombay to Allahabad, and during the daylight, whenever he looked out of his window, this was, of course, in the British era, he could always see blackbuck. So that it was estimated by Colin Groves that that in the beginning of the century, last century, there was something like 4 million blackbuck in India. I can't improve on that figure. I mean, I don't know better. But I have, in my estimation, can we move to the next slide, please? This is my book in which I have written about the blackbuck. It's derived from my PhD thesis, but it's here mainly to show you that the two are together, the black and the white. The albino as well as all blackbuck, white blackbuck are not albinos. They have to have pink eyes. Can we go back to that slide? Sorry. Yeah. The other one, the white. Can we go? Can we go forward? All right. It doesn't matter. Um, the estimation. Incidentally, I would just like to mention that. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Um, well, can we move to the next slide?
Yes,
It
sir.
just shows how, yes, this is a prince with a pair of blackbuck in a little buggy. I thought this would just be of interest. Can we move to the next one? The map. All right, sorry. This is just a shot of blackbuck sparring. These are territorial males. Anyway, let this be. So, as I said, at one point of time, in Saurashtra, my estimation was that there were 80,000 blackbuck in 1948, the time of independence. After independence, 10 years later, I estimated the population at something like 3,500. In 10 years, we had lost something like 78,000 animals. We have been very worried, and rightly so, that the tiger population has decreased from 40,000 to less, about 2,000 when we did the first census enumeration in 72. And but here, in 10 years, that was 50 years. Here, in 10 years, it's 80,000 to 2,000, 3,000. The numbers have gone up, but anyway, I will come to the maps just now. Uh, there are two species of the genus. Incidentally, the genus antelope is represented only by one animal, Antelope cervicapra. And there are two subspecies, Antelope cervicapra, which is the South Indian one, slightly smaller, and the North Indian one, which is Cervicapra rajputanae. There is a slight difference in the other one. You would see that the black buck on the right has the black going up, down, only up to the knees, and the rest is white, the front legs. In the other one, it goes black all the way down. They're slightly smaller, and they are not so contrasty. And I'll come to the color. Can we move to the next one, please? The next slide. This was the distribution in 1900. You see, except for the Thar Desert and the run of Kutch, and there was an island there, and I'll come to that, which has now gone, an island in Bani in Kutch, which is not shown here. But apart from the mountains, they were practically everywhere, ubiquitous, as I said. And can you move to the next slide? And this is where they are now. I had estimated the population as something like 45,000 in 1981, 82, but they have increased. They have increased substantially since then. So can we move to the next slide? This is just to tell you where they are and scattered. They have become extinct in Nepal, in Bangladesh and in Pakistan, and a very few survive in Nepal, just a handful. Coming to and I will have to run through quite quickly because time is short. A very important aspect of black buck behavior is its territoriality. Males, there are three kinds. One are those who are alpha males within a herd. And then there are territorial males. And it's interesting how they form those territories, which are in close juxtaposition of each other. They are very small territories, but they are around a focal point, like a watering hole, or a feeding place or a lake. And they are in close, as I said, close proximity of each other. And there is this ding-dong battle always going on. And this is a very characteristic pose in which it stands as a position. And it deposits its urine and its pellets. The one on the right is its deposition of the pellets. And the other male is looking on. They are at the territory. And he's deliberately depositing this to show that this is my territory, don't you come in. And here on the left, he is very reluctant to give up his pellet pile, even when I was approaching in a car. Possessiveness. And they are in close proximity, as I said, to each other. Can we move to the next one? You see, they sit on it. And the other one at the back on the left is sitting on the other one. So, and there is this, and then they go and play, and they go and display against each other, and they try to trespass on each other's territory. And it's very interesting how here is a very large male being shooed off by a black buck on his own territory, a black buck whose both the horns have been broken in battle. But he is able to maintain his territory. Within his territory, he has that confidence and he drives away the other male. I would also like you to see the frontal portion of the thing. This is a rather unique way of most animals display sideways. The black buck is one of the few who displays frontally. And there comes into prominence the white throat patch and the white chest patch. offset against the jet black of the upper body. And this is the way they would present themselves to the female and the one on the right, um, and uh, and to another rival male. The yes, we can move to the next slide. Oh, this is just a thing. The okay, can we go back a little? Sorry, can we go back? I want to show something. Yes. Uh, you see, here it is sitting down. Uh, you must realize that they live in very, very hot climate. They have two breeding seasons. I mean, they have young almost throughout the year, but there are two peak breeding rutting seasons. One is from August to October, September to October mainly, and the other from December to late March. At that time they become very black, and then they lose the color a bit. They have to. In the harsh sunlight that they live, particularly the northern subspecies, the Rajputanae, of which these are specimens, the sunlight is very strong, even in winter. And it is counterproductive to have a black coat because that absorbs heat. It's better to have white. But to offset the counter shading, they have adopted counter shading to counteract shadow cast. If you have black below and white on top, it will merge. It will not show off. You must realize that the main purpose of a male in most in most societies, animal societies, I hope, is reproduction. And what is advantageous in reproduction is what evolution has given to the black man, even though he suffers heat to attain that advantage. So this is just an example. Color is the most fascinating aspect of the evolution of color. Is not enough work done, and nothing in nature is accidental. So, yes, we can move on. So this is just to exhibit to you the counter shading of the thing and the advantage they have. But incidentally, um, I must say this, so that when in the summer they lose their thing, so the blackness isn't there. They lose color during the summer, which is not the breeding season, not the mating season, and so the absorption of heat is not so much. The right at the back of the neck, near medulla oblongata, which is what controls the heat mechanism of the brain. It's yellow. It's not white. It's not black. So there, at least near the brain, at the back side, because that is what is shown. What is shown to the other males is this frontal portion. The back is hidden. So there, evolution has given it a lighter color. It's amazing. But this is how it is. And the more you look at these things and make out it is over a process of millennia of evolution, of the survival of the fittest, you wonder that this is the supreme being, nature. Right. I must move on. I have said something about the thing. They are mainly herbaceous animals. They feed on grasses. Uh, they have one young. I've talked about the white specimen, and very quickly now, I think I would like to go over to the present status and the future. The population trend, I'm glad to say, it is uh, in the Wildlife Protection Act. It is under Schedule 1. because it is a completely protected species and it has to be. The causes of its decline are interesting, and it just shows that however numerous an animal is, and the black buck, as I have said, has been extremely numerous, its decline can be drastic if one doesn't look after them. The problem with the black buck was that it occupied territories which man coveted most with the land hunger that we have. They were flat areas which are cultivable. They were in grasslands, which are the most productive ecosystems in this country and in the world. And they were converted into agriculture fields, particularly after independence. There was a Grow More Food campaign, and I, as a collector, have also been asked to distribute land, to give pattas, where politicians can come and get some votes by handing over pattas. But yes, at that time, it was thought that we must give land to the landless. And the land that was given was the habitat of the. You must realize that the largest number of Schedule 1 animals and birds are grassland specific species, high grasslands or low grasslands, whether it is the Bharasinga or the Manipur deer or the bustard or the blackbuck. And there are so many others. And they are the most threatened today. So the blackbuck habitat shrunk. There was a spate of crop protection weapons being given to the collectors were asked to give away crop protection guns so that crops could be saved. But Nilgai, being a Nilgai, was not shot at so much. The blackbuck was, because the meat is very good eating, and the blackbuck is an easier animal to kill, the smaller, even with a blunderbuss. So the blackbuck suffered, and I mentioned what happened. And today, unfortunately, uh, the one of the greatest threats is from feral dogs. They form packs and they chase them into these areas. You see, these are black cotton soil, and once it rains, they become very muddy, very slushy, and the hooves of the black buck sink. This is Tal Chopper in Rajasthan, and the dogs who have paws and pads don't sink in, and they form packs and hunt them. The original predator was the cheetah and the wolf. The cheetah went extinct. The wolf um, has also been almost wiped out, but it's the dogs now. Incidentally, uh, it is been recorded by, again, um, the Mughal emperor, uh, Jahangir, that Akbar had at one time 1,000 cheetahs in captivity and 9,000 altogether in its lifetime of rule of 50 plus years. If there were so many cheetahs that could be captured and kept in captivity, you can understand how many blackbuck there would have been. Because you must understand this, that the cheetah went extinct because the prey went. The blackbuck was the main prey. The African cheetah has over 50 species of taxa genera to feed on. The Indian cheetah had the blackbuck number one, the chinkara gazelle number two, and some odd, of course, piglets and young of nilgai and where possible hares and things. But it was the blackbuck on which it mainly survived, and therefore its fate is linked with the blackbuck. The cheetah can survive in other areas too, where there are other, but it requires areas where it can run and catch its prey. And the last cheetah went extinct into areas which were open, which may not and did not have blackbuck, but had cheetal, whom they chased in open forest medans, open lands. And today the cheetah is going to come back, hopefully, in November. And we hope that it will help the conservation of not just the cheetah, but of the grasslands and of the Blackbuck. Uh, I think I've gone on long enough. I must pay tribute to certain communities who have been extremely uh, helpful and on their own accord have saved the Blackbuck population. The Bishnois of Rajasthan, the Wala Rajputs of Saurashtra, and there are other such religious sentiment areas where they have been protected. And I think we should have more reserves, community reserves, which is one of the things that I put in the Wildlife Act, which was amended, which would enable the saving of these areas which are sacrosanct and which are related and connected with the religious sentiment of the local communities. Because in a democracy like ours, we can only succeed if there is cooperation and participation of the local communities and people. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, sir. So for the informative talk on the Blackbuck, we will take question answers for this session towards once the zoo talk is also over. So we now move on to the second part of today's webinar, which is on Know Your Zoo. So joined in today to speak to us on the zoo is Mr. Vipul Chakrabarti, who is the director of Tata Steel Zoological Park. Mr. Vipul is a wildlife biologist by training. He did his master's from the Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, and has over 3 decades of experience working in the field of ex situ conservation. He has provided significant inputs in the management and planning of captive breeding programs and in the development of zoos and rescue centers. He has also been associated with the creation and establishment of the Laboratory for Conservation of Endangered Species in Hyderabad. He has also assisted in drafting the National Zoo Policy and in the amendments of the Wildlife Protection Act 2003. He has received various accolades throughout his career and has over 30 publications in environment and wildlife. He will speak to us today more on the Tata Steel Zoological Park and its vision. Over to you, sir.
Very good evening. At the onset, I would like to thank the organizers in giving me an opportunity to become part of this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav celebration and to present before you the Tata Steel Zoological Park, a millennial zoo in the context, and what it has achieved in its 27 years of existence in Jamshedpur and what it is dreaming to be in the future.
Sir, may I request you to please put it on presentation mode?
Yeah, done.
Yes. Thank you.
So the foundation of Tata Steel Zoological Park was laid on 16th January 1990 and the zoo was opened to the visitors on 3rd March 1994, which also happened to be the 87th foundation day of Tata Steel. The present area of the zoo is 25 hectares, which is interspersed with wooded area, manicured lawns and garden. Zoo is nestled between 2 important wetlands, namely the Suvarnarekha River flowing on the north of the zoo and the Jayanti Sarovar on the south. The zoo is managed by a society, namely the Tata Steel Zoological Society, which is registered under the Societies Act and of course the Income Tax Act. The society is wholly promoted by Tata Steel. The basic objective of Tata Steel Zoological Society is to run the zoological park. It has a zoo advisory committee or the managing committee, which comprises of 10 members, out of which 4 are office bearers, namely the president, vice president, honorary secretary, and honorary treasurer. The vice president happens to be a permanent chief of corporate social responsibility. Tata Steel Zoological Society gets financial assistance from the CSR head of Tata Steel. The society approves yearly budget of the zoo for its day-to-day operation and new projects to be taken up during that year. The execution of the work and the projects are carried out by the officers of the zoo and of course the hired professionals. This is the current organizational setup of the Zoological Society and the park. The president is on top of the pyramid, followed by honorary secretary. The director reports to the honorary secretary. There are separate four wings in the zoological park, one taking care of the health of the animals, which is headed by a deputy director who also happens to be a veterinarian. The animal keeping wing is headed by the curator. The zoo biology and research wing is headed by uh, a zoo biologist come education officer, and of course the administrative wing being headed by the office supervisor. The current incumbency, we have 13 regular posts and 24 personnel working against these posts. 4 posts are of officer rank, the director, deputy director, curator, and biologist come education officer. Others are all supporting in nature. There is a gap in the uh, staff strength, and that is being managed through contractual engagements. The security, housekeeping, and estate management has been completely outsourced, and yearly we have tenders to select eligible vendors. As I had earlier said, Tata Steel Zoological Park or the society gets aid under the CSR head of the Tata Steel, and during these last 5 years, the volume has been increasing under the CSR head. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, the zoo has been closed since 17th of March 2020, and we are yet to open to the public. Zoo is almost annually visited by around 4.5 lakh visitors. This has again also plateaued. 1920, there was a little bit of shortfall because of the COVID pandemic setting in early in January, February. Most peak seasons of visitation in our zoo is between October to March. Coming to the number of animals we have in our collection, we have 466 captive animals in our collection. Of these, 18 are mammals, 28 species of birds, and 4 are reptile species. Again, out of these, 8 species of mammals, 3 species of birds, and 2 species of reptiles fall under the Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 category of the Wildlife Protection Act, and therefore have been categorized as endangered under the Recognition of Zoo Rules 2009. Blackbuck is one such animal which we have in our collection, and of both the colors, white as well as black. The total population of blackbuck at the moment is 77, out of which 31 are male and 46 are female. During this course of 27 years of our journey, we have touched on smaller milestones. As I was telling, breeding of blackbuck has been one of our stronger achievements. We have bred also hog deers in our zoo, grey langurs and bonnet macaques. Indian peafowl and red jungle fowl are continuously being bred as per the guidance of the Wildlife Institute of India. We could organize a C-section of an African lioness. She was not able to deliver in a normal way. So we had to go for a C-section. Generally, large cats having C-section don't survive. But this was our greatest achievement, and our veterinary health team did a marvelous job to bring back that lioness into a new life, and she is doing very well at this moment. There was an outbreak of canine distemper in Gir National Park during September 2018. As a follow-up, we also said, let us also try to have a sero survey of our large cats. So we tied up with the National Institute of Virology, ISEMA, and we carried out the sero survey of canine distemper, and we didn't have any such canine distemper presence in our large cats. So that was a one unique thing of getting help from a national institute. Another milestone which we reached was transportation of 100 plus spotted deers from about 600 kilometers to the North Bengal wildlife safari. And there was no casualty during the capture as well as transportation of these 100 plus spotted deers. So that was a big milestone we could achieve. Again, thanks goes to the veterinary team as well as the able supervision of the team from West Bengal Wildlife Department. We have created a butterfly enclosure, one among the first in Jharkhand zoos, and this center is doing very well. We could actually master now throughout breeding the year. Throughout the year we are breeding 12 species constantly, and we are displaying it to the public. Nature education and awareness has been our forte, and majority of the activities which we have done is through nature camps for girl students. We have gone to the tribal areas to motivate the women folk. Around 19 villages were covered and 5,300 tribal women we could touch upon. 1,000 students from the Naxal prone areas were brought into the zoo for an orientation on wildlife and conservation of nature. We also have touched upon 100 plus orphans from the Tata Nagar railway station and the Ghagedi Central Jail Correction Home, and we have brought those orphan children out here to orient themselves towards inculcating love and empathy for the animals. Zoo school is very common feature. We go to the villages, village schools to orient them about the need for wildlife conservation. We have instituted Eco Club Teacher Awards, and annually these awards are given to the best Eco Club teacher in Jamshedpur as well as the nearby districts of Odisha and West Bengal. Keeper for a day and keeper talk are our regular features. Of course, in the last 16 months, these are not happening very frequently, but virtually we have been touching upon. We did a SWOT analysis of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and we found that we have a huge bunch of strengths with us. One being the zoo is set up in a natural setting, preserves a diversity of animals, both in captivity as well as wild inside. We have around 28 species of wild birds which are found in wild nature in our campus. 94 species of tree have been enumerated inside our campus. Around 60% of them are endemic to this region. And of course, 4 mammalian species we have inside our campus, jackal being one prominent species, which have taken shelter in the small forest patches lying inside the zoo. The zoo is annually visited by 4.5 lakh people, and one major, again, strength we have that we are located in the Singhbum Elephant Reserve, and Dalma Wildlife Sanctuary is just 10 kilometers away from our zoo. The weaknesses which we felt was that it is an NGO managed zoo, therefore no financial support from the state government or the central government is coming forth with. We have opportunities like it is being run by a society, therefore freedom to execute development plans and programs. The global brand Tata is associated with the society and the zoo, and of course a long-term master plan has been recently approved by the Central Zoo Authority for the future course and development of the zoo. The major threat we envisage is the financial health of Tata Steel, because that will depend upon how much CSR funding we get every year. Now, our future, what we are dreaming about to be a future zoo. This is a general view, aerial view of a zoo. You can just see how green the campus is. About 70% green cover is maintained in our zoo campus. You can see the river Subarnarekha on the north flowing, and of course the Jayanti Sarovar in the south. The existing and the proposed layout plans. The existing plan, you can see it is just an airstrip land, doesn't have that scope of development out there. So we borrowed land from the Tata Steel, and we have developed a master plan which is thematic in nature, which will have the separate carnivore sections, separate reptile sections, separate primate sections, birds, and insect area. And of course, the visitors will get to know about the species at one go at each by visiting each of these thematic zones. There are 7 critical areas which the new plan proposes to address. The animal collection plan, of course, it will be as per the national zoo policy. The conservation education, which is one of our major strengths, that will be given more strength into it. Research activities are currently not happening, so we propose to invest upon the research activities in the zoo so that we are abreast with the latest zoo designs in the animal welfare and, of course, the broadening of zoo research activities. Statutory provisions, yes, they are not only meeting the Central Zoo Authority standards or the Wildlife Protection Act, but there are also other financial and human resource statutory obligations which we propose to meet. Human resource development will be one of the key factors where we propose to build up the capacity of the existing staff as well as hire experienced professionals. An institutional approach shall be undertaken to develop the zoo in the near future. Visitor services, of course, improved visitor services for differently abled, for aged personnel shall be put in place. Of exhibit areas, the zoo being located in the Singhbum Elephant Reserve and in close proximity to the Dalma Wildlife Sanctuary continuously receives animals in distress or animals in conflict, which are rescued by the Forest Department and directly brought into the zoo for either treatment of their injuries or for or the orphaned elements for hand rearing purpose. So off exhibit areas will be created in the new proposed plan so that we can have a small area dedicated to these animals. So what do we look at our future 2030 mission? Our 2030 mission will be that will be a living center for education and science committed to providing satisfying visitor experiences and inspiring passion to protect wildlife and habitats. What are our present activities? What are we doing at the moment? Enclosure enrichment to reduce stereotypy in the animals. Generally, captive animals build up stereotypy behavior very fast. So we keep on enriching their habitats. Of course, I have spoken about the Butterfly Conservation and Breeding Center. I have also touched upon bringing in students from the Naxalite prone areas to orient themselves on wildlife conservation and to have empathy for wildlife. We have also gone to hospitals, cancer, especially cancer hospitals, and brought in cancer patients to provide them a solace among the animals. We do commemorate, of course, the birthdays of large cats. Planting is one more areas which we concentrate every year, not only on Van Mahotsav, but on various occasions. We take help of the Forest Department as well as the school children and do plantation work. Friendship Day, Wildlife Week is organized every year meticulously. Art in Nature Camp, we bring in professionals as well as amateurs, artists and sculptors and have a 10-day nature camp where the artists actually appreciate nature or bring nature on the canvas and on their sculptures. Touch and learn activity is one activity which continuously keep on doing with the small children to give them a feel of how the wild animal articles are. Annual nature camp. Every year we have a 3-day residential nature camp for girl students. They are taken to the wildlife sanctuary for orientation. Fundraising, yes, as an NGO run zoo, we need to raise funds from other sources. We cannot always depend upon the promoter. So we go on for fundraising activities also. One more activity is the animal adoption program. The animal adoption program, majority of the zoos are now doing, so we are also into it, and all our animals currently are adopted by various corporate houses and individuals. As I had already said, that being located in the Singbum elephant landscape, we keep on receiving rescued animals. So we attend to the rescued animals, the orphaned, and of course the injured elephants. Veterinary intervention and animal health. Yes, of course, this is one of the strongest activity we do in keeping check of animal health and of course their future welfare. Capacity building, one of the objective is to keep on training people so that more and more wildlife aware citizens are out in the open to help us conserve wildlife. So keeper training from other Indian zoos we have done. We have gone to village schools, as I had said. Keeper for a day and keeper talks are our continuous activities. We have also gone for partnerships as well as cooperations to develop our zoo on more scientific lines. We had a small partnership with the National Zoological Gardens of South Africa, where we could bring in some animals also under that program. We had an interaction with the Chester Zoo in UK for a partnership. And of course, the State Bank of India helped us develop a wildlife healthcare center in our zoo. Whatever we have done, we have also got recognition, and a small token of recognition was given by TripAdvisor in 2018. And of course, to end with a George Eliot lines, animals are such agreeable friends. They ask no questions, they pass no criticism. This actually makes us or motivates us to be more proactive towards taking care of their welfare, not only in ex situ, but also in situ. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the extremely knowledgeable presentation on the zoo and making the audience also have a brief overview of the entire zoo setup. We will now move on to the question answer session. I would request you to stop sharing your screen, sir.
Yeah,
It will be
yeah.
on the top corner. Yes. So, Dr. Ranjit Singh, the first question for you is that climate change could be one reason for the changes in grassland habitats. How do you think this would affect species like blackbuck, great Indian bustard that are so dependent on such habitats? And what measures would you suggest that managers consider for their conservation?
Sorry, I could not get the first part of the question.
So the first part of the question, sir, is that climate change could be one reason for the changes in grassland habitats. How would this affect species like blackbuck, great Indian bustard that are so dependent on such habitats? And what measures would you suggest that managers consider for their conservation?
Has not been enough work done on the effect on grasslands climate change wise. The 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 There has been research done, and that's a very important research about how grasslands affect climate change. That one of the very important aspects of trees is what is called carbon sequestration. That they absorb carbon, they produce oxygen, and therefore they neutralize the effect of excess carbon production, which is the cause of the change in temperature and the increase in temperature and therefore the change in climate. It is found that the grasslands are almost, or if not more effective, because you see the grassland grasses store the carbon and in their roots, while the trees keep them in the leaves. So if there is a fire, the carbon is released from the leaves and the bulk of the body of the thing. But in a grass, the roots are usually saved. And since it is so, if the grasslands are burnt, not so much carbon escapes in the air. The effect of any climate on grassland will of course be there, as was asked. What is worrisome is the exotic species. You see, there are two broad species categories of grasses. One is the what is called the less nutritious one. They are called andropogon grasses. Sorry, heteropogon grasses. And the other ones are andropogon, which has a greater content of protein, nutrition value, mineral value. The heteropogon grasses are usually non-palatable. They are annual grasses. They seed and they. The others are perennial grasses. The andropogon ones, which and the protein content varies between the two from 2 to 3% to 28%. So you can see the difference. The worrisome factor is that if exotics come in, or if there is a climate change which will help the ones which are annual and less nutritious, then it will certainly affect the. But what will be more worrisome is the conversion of grasslands into woodlands, which is what has happened. Unfortunately, what you see, we have, I'm sorry to labor this point, we have a forest policy. We don't have a grassland policy. During my tenure as Director of Wildlife twice over, I've tried to push this. No state government, no politicians would like to have to restrict grazing and lose votes. And yet we need grassland policy and a control of grassland, of grazing and all that, more than any other country in the world, because we have more livestock than any other country of the whole world. And they are all almost free grazing. They're grazing not on private land. They are not stall fed as the Western livestock are. They are not fed on private property. They're fed on what are called common lands. The beads, which have gone, and that's why the blackbuck and the bustard are gone. And those beads are shrunk, as I have mentioned in my talk, and the beads have quantitatively and qualitatively also altered. Because there is, as you would understand, no such thing as free lunch in ecology. The whole nation plays for the profligacy of our free grazing. That is what it is. And then the heteropogon, the annual, the less nutritious grass comes about, and the greater pressure builds up. So this is what is more worrisome, and climate change will also affect that. I think I've taken a long time for it. There must be other questions.
No problem, sir. So the second question for you is that, sir, for the safe future of the black buck, what conservation measures involving communities would you suggest as feasible measures? Especially with the absence of any large predators, there is a likelihood that overpopulation may occur in certain areas, which could lead to an human-wildlife conflict.
There would be human conflict because we are having agriculture fields right next, and they therefore have to stand on agriculture field. There are more than one output. One is the effective management of protected areas, and to have Villavadar and is one, and there are other areas where there are blackbuck. So in those areas, we must protect them and save them. The other is the utilization of what I mentioned about the religious sentiment of the local people, because they hold them sacred. There are communities which hold the blackbuck and other life forms sacred. I think we are fortunate for that. India, in my first book, I devoted a whole chapter to this religious sentiment in wildlife and how religious sentiment has contributed to wildlife conservation. I think we should harness that and give them, and that is the whole purpose of community reserves under the Wildlife Protection Act. So that is one part of the story. There is another which science comes in, and for the last 40, 50 years, I've been harping on it, and this is where CRZ and everything else will come in. You see, man-animal conflict. The blackbuck uh, does raid crops. Many other species do. Wild boar is very pernicious in that regard. The nilgai is much more, I think, and there are elephants also who can create havoc. The blackbuck has certain preferences. The wheat, for instance, the first 23 weeks, and then when the grain sets in, they don't touch it. There are certain crops like mirchi, chilies. They won't touch it. There are other cash crops, food crops. They don't touch them. There are certain crops they'll never leave. Guar, juar. They will keep on hammering them. So, why can't we involve agriculture universities to propagate those agricultural crops, cultivars, which are suitable to the area, remunerative, because nobody is going to shift from one crop to the other unless he gets equal amount of return. But there are certain crops. You can't grow mirchi all over the place, but you can grow it in certain areas. And mirchi, they won't touch, as I said. Now, and there are the same application applies to other animals. That they eat certain crops, they don't eat, and some they eat only seasonally and don't for a certain period and then don't bother. Cotton, for instance. Now, so can the agriculture universities be involved in developing and propagating those plant cultivars, which are, as I said, remunerative, suitable to the area, and equally remunerative, which are not hammered away by the blackbuck and others. We haven't even started. Over and over again, I pleaded, and I make a plea now. Somebody should start it. It's not a bad idea. At worst, what will come, we will not succeed. But have it given it a try? No. I think we should. Thank you.
All right, so the next question, sir, for you is that there are several myths on the black buck which are also conservational mode of the species. Have you ever implemented this human emotion in your field experience?
Sorry?
That there's a human emotion in your field experience in terms of, I think, the myths that are there that surround the black buck.
I don't get the question too well.
So the
Human,
yes.
I mean, passion.
Yes, I mean, and I think in terms of the human psyche, in terms of what the myths are there for the black buck, is it's like a this thing. Have you ever implemented these kind of myths when you're talking about the conservation of the species, or to further conservation? I think that's what the question is trying to ask.
There are
Have
certain
you?
myths. Look, I had a tame black buck which I had with me for 8 years, and it did 8 transfers with me, and it was a part of my household. And I've written it in my book, and it used to. I had called him Lindwall, Lindy, after I was very passionate about cricket, and Lindwall was very fast at this thing. And this animal would it told me so many things, and so I did have a tame black buck for a number of years, and then ultimately, like all pets, he died. No, the myths what myths that I don't know what empathy, yes, always. Um, the the myths about Mriga and all that, and about incidentally, as you know, it was the golden Mriga which enticed uh, Sita to go, and all those are certainly there. But I don't really get what myths that. But no, the animal itself has been associated since my childhood. I used to go as a small boy and see them, and they used to be on the airstrip near our home, and we used to go chasing after them. And my earliest memories of wildlife has been associated. They were very common in my area, and troublesome in the sense that they used to eat away the crops. And my father used to keep on saying that, grandfather, he was then the ruler, कि इसको थोड़ा कम करना चाहिए. Anyway,
All
sorry.
right, sir. So I think we move to the last question that's there for you. It says that, do you see Blackbuck becoming ambassadors for the conservation of grassland habitats? And what message would you give young conservation professionals regarding on-ground conservation action?
That's a good one. You see, in India, we go by symbols. The tiger was we use the tiger to save what I believe even greater than the tiger, which was the habitats of the tiger. As member secretary of the first the committee which started Project Tiger, we selected 8, 9 areas which didn't always have the largest number of tiger, but which had a whole a cross section of the entire habitats of the tiger. Because you must always remember the habitat is more important. If there is a habitat, the animals will survive, and that happens across the board. You can have the habitat without a wild animal. You cannot have a wild animal without a habitat. We often forget that. We can only have them in zoos, like Vipul has them, and very rightly so. But so it should lead to the preservation of the habitats, and from that point of view, the black buck must be. So we've used the tiger, we've used the snow leopard for the magnificent spectrum, the richest in the whole world of mountain animals in the whole world, the Himalayas. And we've used the dolphin to try to protect the Gangetic dolphin to try to protect the river ecosystem. We are trying to use um, whale shark for our coastal areas. So why can't we use and should use the black buck and the bustard to save the grasslands? Because the bustard is also in a terrible way. In my opinion, less than 100 left. So, yes, as the vanguard, and to utilize the religious sentiments of the local communities, because having said all this about the problems of this, India has been one of the easiest countries in the whole developing world to protect wildlife. We blew it. We had everything going for us. We had, unlike Africa, we are mostly vegetarian people. We have the empathy for life. We have large communities which do not even eat meat, unlike Africa. And there was this feeling of a sacred head, and the effective protected areas were already there. The when I was director first time, I took tally, and something like 86% of the areas which then were protected areas, there were only 200 of those days, now there's 600, were the hunting reserves of the princes and of the British. They were already there. It's those 10 years we blew it. And please remember this, and this is rather important. In India, unfortunately, conservation has come from the top, not from the bottom. It's come from the princes, from the British, and from interested prime ministers and chief ministers, not from the bottom. It should come from the bottom. Only then in a democracy can you save them. Thank you.
Right. So those were the questions for you. So we now move on to questions for Mr. Vipul. So, sir, the first question for you is that blackbucks seem to be doing well in Indian zoos. How do you see captive populations contributing to conservation as species ambassadors for the habitats and for the habitats?
Yeah, fully subscribe to that. And as Dr. Ranjit Singh had said, that unless and until we create such kind of suitable habitats outside, especially the grasslands, which are now very few in places. So once that is addressed,
Uh, Mr. Vipul, can you hear us? Okay, I think we've lost connection with the zoo. So, okay, I think we've lost connection with the zoo, and since I do not think he's coming back, Mr. Vipul, can you hear me? Right. Okay. So then I think we should close the session, even though there were a few more questions from Mr. Vipul, because I don't think we are able to connect to him at this moment. So, on behalf of Central Zoo Authority, I would like to thank you, Dr. Ranjit Singh, and to Mr. Vipul for joining, for taking time out from your schedule and joining us for this talk. I would also like to thank the audience. We are having a huge number of students also who have joined in for this talk this time, and I would like to inform them that do read the books that Dr. Ranjit Singh has written, because he has been stellar in the field of conservation and in the environment protection. So do read more about it, to acquaint yourself with what is happening in what has happened so far in the environment legislation, as well as what is happening in terms of the issues today. Secondly, I would like to tell the audience also that the Tata Steel Zoological Park will be continuing the outreach activities till the end of this week, which is on the 1st of August. So do follow their social media pages. It will benefit all of you students. And we will be having our next 21st Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo talk with the Machia Biological Park as the zoo in focus and the Chinkara as the species in focus. So do join in for that talk next week from 4 to 5 p.m. on our YouTube channel. And lastly, thank you so much once again, Dr. Ranjit Singh and Mr. Bipul, even though we've not been able to have much of a connection towards the end. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
all of you. But he's gone off. I mean, can he not be
Yes,
brought back?
I think,
Vipul,
sir, they're having a connection issue because I'm
that's
not able to
sorry.
contact them. So
That's
yeah,
sad.
this is a bit of a thing during the during online meets that we do place. But anyhow, it's been a pleasure to have you, sir, and thank you so much for
Thank
doing
you very
this.
much.
Thank you, sir.